Easy Company was ready. The men had been stationed in England for roughly 6 months before D-Day, spending countless hours on field maneuvers and parachute training in preparation for the invasion. As Frederick Moose Heyliger later recalled, they flew for roughly an hour and a half after leaving southern England, passing over the Channel, the Jersey Islands, and finally the Cherbourg Peninsula. That was when, in his words, the fireworks started. Frederick Moose Heyliger was born on June 23, 1916, in Rosendale, a residential suburb of Boston, Massachusetts. After graduating from Concord High School, he spent 2 years at Lawrence Academy before attending the University of Michigan for another 2 years. During this period, he enlisted in the National Guard, serving 3 years with the 182nd Infantry Regiment. He later completed 10 weeks of training as a flying cadet in Albany, Georgia. In February 1940, Heyliger was drafted into the U.S. Army and assigned to the 26th Yankee Division's 51st Field Artillery Brigade. Serving as a private first class, he spent a year at Camp Edwards in Falmouth training as a machine gunner. In 1942, he attended officer candidate school at Fort Knox, Kentucky, for 3 months before being commissioned as a second lieutenant and assigned to the 4th Armored Division at Camp Chaffee. In September 1942, he transferred to the 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment at Camp Toccoa, Georgia. The additional $100 per month in jump pay made the decision an easy one. Heyliger served in Easy Company's headquarters section as leader of the 81mm mortar platoon. He remained in that role throughout the regiment's training and during the combat jump into Normandy on D-Day. On September 17, 1944, at 10 a.m., he once again parachuted into combat, this time during Operation Market Garden in Holland, still commanding the company's mortar platoon. Following the death of Major Oliver Horton, Richard Winters was promoted to Executive Officer of the 2nd Battalion. That promotion left a vacancy in Easy Company, and Heyliger became the company's 4th commanding officer. On the night of October 22nd to 23rd, Easy Company was stationed on the south bank of the river, when Colonel Robert Sink received word from the Dutch underground that approximately 130 stranded British paratroopers were waiting near Arnhem to be rescued. Heyliger was selected to lead the daring mission, later known as Operation Pegasus. Easy Company crossed the river in 10 rubber assault boats. However, no one had warned them about the strength of the current, and they landed roughly 300 yards downstream from the planned rendezvous point. Using flashlights to communicate in Morse code, they successfully made contact with the British soldiers and guided them safely back across the river without firing a single shot. The flawless operation earned Heyliger the British Military Cross in recognition of his leadership. Ironically, the following day German artillery destroyed the boats that had made the rescue possible. On the night of October 30, 1944, Heyliger accompanied Battalion Executive Officer Captain Richard Winters to inspect a forward machine gun position. As they approached the outpost, they were challenged by one of their own sentries and asked for the nightly password. Heyliger could not remember it. Before he could properly identify himself, the nervous soldier fired 2 rounds, striking his commanding officer. Even more than 40 years after the war, Heyliger still could not remember the forgotten password that had nearly cost him his life. He was rushed to a nearby field hospital before being flown the following day to Cheltenham, England, where doctors diagnosed serious wounds that included damage to his shoulder and a severe injury to his calf. The artery in his leg had to be tied off to stop the bleeding. From there he was transferred to Glasgow, Scotland, then transported aboard the hospital ship Queen Elizabeth to Halloran Hospital on Staten Island. He was later moved to Valley Forge Hospital for a skin graft on his leg, before finally being transferred to Atlantic City Hospital, where doctors planned a nerve graft that was ultimately never performed. Richard Winters later described the incident in his memoir, Beyond Band of Brothers. On the evening of October 31st, Winters invited 1st Lieutenant Heyliger to accompany him on an inspection of Easy Company's frontline positions. German patrols had been unusually active during the previous week, making a nighttime inspection necessary. At around 9 p.m., Winters arrived at Heyliger's command post, and the 2 men headed toward the sector commanded by 1st Lieutenant Harry Welsh. Welsh's command post was located in a barn approximately 50 yards west of the railroad tracks, where German forces maintained their own outposts. Before leaving, Winters telephoned Welsh to inform him they were on their way. Unfortunately, although Welsh was normally an outstanding platoon leader, He neglected to notify his sentries that the two officers would be approaching. Winters and Heyliger walked shoulder to shoulder along a narrow raised path, bordered on each side by drainage ditches roughly 3 feet deep. As they neared the command post, a voice suddenly ordered them to halt. Winters immediately sensed something was wrong. He knew Heyliger had forgotten the password. As Heyliger began trying to identify himself, 3 rapid rifle shots rang out from barely 10 yards away. Instinctively, Winters threw himself into the ditch beside the road, while Heyliger collapsed where he stood. For a brief moment, Winters believed they had stumbled into a German patrol because the rifle fire had been so sudden and intense. Moments later, however, he heard footsteps running away and realized they had been fired upon by one of their own men. Climbing from the ditch, Winters dragged Heyliger to the side of the path. The lieutenant had been hit in the right shoulder and left leg. His calf had been devastated by the bullet, and Winters immediately began bandaging the wound as best he could. Within minutes, Harry Welsh and several Easy Company soldiers arrived after hearing the gunfire. Together they treated Heyliger, administering several doses of morphine to ease the pain. By the time he was finally evacuated to an ambulance, he had lost an enormous amount of blood and was nearly unconscious. His face had turned ghostly white. As the ambulance departed, Winters could only hope that his friend would survive. Heyliger did survive, but his war had come to an abrupt end. After commanding Easy Company for less than a month, he became the victim of one of the most tragic forms of battlefield loss: friendly fire. Winters later reflected that the incident demonstrated the danger posed by frightened, inexperienced soldiers rushed to the front before receiving sufficient combat experience. While recovering in England, Heyliger wrote Winters a heartfelt letter, thanking him for saving his life that night. Despite the seriousness of his injuries, he retained his sense of humor, joking that the cast covering his wounds smelled as if a cat had shit in my bed, and complaining that he could not escape the stench. Heyliger remained in military hospitals until his discharge in 1947. The wounds continued to cause him pain for the rest of his life, and even more than 50 years later, he still could not remember the password that had led to the shooting. Regarding the soldier responsible, Winters immediately arranged for the man's transfer out of Easy Company. He acknowledged that the sentry had been attempting to perform his duty, but believed fear had overtaken his judgment. Normally, an experienced soldier would attempt to identify approaching figures before opening fire. This man, however, panicked and fired immediately. Winters never revealed where the soldier was transferred, nor did he care to know. In his view, the man would carry the burden of what had happened for the rest of his life. At the time, Winters' greatest concern was preserving the morale and unity of Easy Company. Under no circumstances could the soldier remain with the unit after shooting its commanding officer. The letter Heyliger wrote to Winters in November 1944 later appeared in popular culture. In Episode 5 of Band of Brothers, Bill Guarnier returns to Easy Company in Holland before the unit moves to Mourmelon, France. He hands Winters a letter from Heyliger, prompting a meaningful glance between Winters and Harry Welsh. The letter portrayed in the series was based on the real correspondence. In it, Heyliger thanked Winters for taking care of him after he was wounded, remarking that it was a stupid way to get knocked out. He explained that he had lost a tremendous amount of blood and had already received 6 transfusions, though his strength was gradually returning. He joked that he was naked as a jaybird and noted that all of his belongings, including his jump wings and pistol, remained with Winters. Much of the remainder of the original letter has faded with time and is now difficult to decipher. After being wounded in Holland on October 31st, 1944, Heyliger spent the next 2 years and 4 months recovering in a succession of military hospitals before finally receiving his discharge in February 1947. Before the war, he had studied biology and physical education at the University of Michigan. After returning home, he used the GI Bill to continue his education, enrolling at the University of Massachusetts. In 1950, he graduated with an associate degree in ornamental horticulture. Over the next 4 decades, Heyliger worked with several companies throughout the Boston area, providing products, advice, and technical support to landscape contractors and golf courses. He and his first wife had 2 children. His first son was born on the very day the troop ship SS Samaria departed for England, while his daughter was born after the war had ended. In 1966, he married his second wife, and together they had a son. Outside of work, Heyliger enjoyed the outdoors. His favorite hobbies included arrowhead hunting, birdwatching, and camping. In 1986, he returned to the battlefields of Europe, revisiting the places where he had fought more than 40 years earlier. Frederick Moose Heyliger passed away on November 3, 2001, only a few weeks after Band of Brothers first aired on television. He was 85 years old. Who was at fault when it came to this friendly fire incident? Many have blamed Harry Welsh for not notifying the sentry of their presence. Moose certainly didn't help the situation by forgetting the password. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, please consider hitting the like and subscribe.